Hey, in today's video, we're gonna go over how to swap a transmission over. Specifically, we're talking about this Peugeot B transmission out of a Jeep, and we're gonna be putting in an AX15. I'll let you know what it really takes to pull off this kind of upgrade for your Jeep Cherokee. And we'll also quickly go over some history of just kind of different transmissions that Jeep actually used. And of course, I'm going to be leaving some part numbers or links, pictures as we go. Probably at the end, I'll have a whole list of everything. So, all right, and like, subscribe. Be seeing some future videos I'll be making. Okay. All right, let's get going. All right, so I guess the little bit of history background for the transmissions that Jeep used for the second generation Cherokee from 1984 up to 2001. I guess starting off with the automatics here, I know it's a transmission, a manual transmission swap video, but can't just ignore all the automatics. There's a few different ones that they had, just in case you do really want to put one of those in instead. The most common though, if someone says, hey, I've got a Jeep Cherokee and I have an automatic transmission, it's probably like 90% of the time it's going to be this Edison AW4. It's the most common one, and it's actually a pretty hardy transmission. I mean, you could. I've had friends, I've had stories of people where they completely forget about the fluid in there, it run it dry, starts making noise, they fill back up, and they're on their way. So the manual is by far my favorite, and of course they started off with a few different versions too here. This is where it gets kind of fun because it was the Peugeot, it's the BA510, sometimes known as the suitcase. I call it the doorstop. Yeah, it's really that bad. Now remember here, at this time frame, right around 1986-ish, AMC actually owned Jeep, Renault company. They had a large stake in the company. So what they did was, that's how we ended up with a lot of this European influence in these Cherokees. That's why they look kind of boxy and they have this different style. We ended up with the Renault Bendix, the Renix computer engine management system. I know it's long, Renix for short, but a lot of that French design went into these Jeeps, and they carried over with the transmissions too. The reason why I really want to stay away from this BA transmission is because it actually isn't even supposed to be in a Jeep at all. It's a lightweight car transmission. Somehow ended up in here, and they're expecting this little transmission to do all this work, all this power coming out of the 4.0, and throw some four-wheel drive in there at the same time. Why not? What's the worst that can happen, right? Anyway, back at that time, they were trying to save money, and this is what we ended up with. This case, it actually, the transmission, if you looked at it, it was kind of split down like a suitcase. You could open it right up, but it had a tendency of stretching out as you go, as it gets hot and worn out. The gears would not mesh correctly if it starts stretching, and then of course shifting becomes an issue. I've actually gotten locked out of it a couple of times when I was driving. I can remember four-wheel drive driving around, like going uphill, and it wouldn't let me shift anywhere. It just locked me in like third or fourth or something, and it wouldn't go. I had to turn off the Jeep and sit there for a second, and then it would finally release. I don't know what it is, but so these Jeeps, they actually came with this internal slave cylinder setup. This is really the meat of why I really want to get rid of this thing. There's this slave cylinder. It goes inside of the bell housing here, and if it ever goes out, you have to drop everything. You have to take out the transmission, you have to take off the drive lines, exhaust, all of this just to get to this one little component up there. And it's a nightmare because it's a common part. Most vehicles nowadays, they have it, but it's on the outside of the Jeep. But this Peugeot transmission though, we had it actually had a really short run. I'm glad, from about 1987 up to 89. So we only had a 2-year stretch. It was replaced by the much stronger, the AX15. That's why I went this route. It's got heavyweight gears. It's way better suited to handle the power, coming out of the Jeep engine. later, up in about 2000 to 2001, that's when they came out with this even stronger, even better, newer NV3500. It's entirely possible if you want to go pick up one of those or an AX15 and swap it out, you can do that. Or if you have an automatic and you want to go for one of these, go right ahead, but stay away from the Peugeot if you can. And to be fair, actually, these AX15 transmissions, they did also come with the internal slave cylinder setup, so you still got stuck with that inside the bell housing where you have to drop it all, but it's a much stronger transmission. So with the external, the outside slave cylinder, the more common, those ones, they didn't come out to about 93, 90, I think 94 is when they came out, so 1994. These AX15s, they were actually used all the way up until 1999. So from 89 to 90, that's a 10-year run. That shows you right there the hardiness, the value here. I mean, the Peugeot only, 2 years? This guy's 10, so. So now we do have just a little bit of a history here of, a few of the compatible transmissions that you can choose from if you're wanting to undertake an upgrade or something like this. But let's look at how I actually transferred it out now. This is where it gets a little fun. All right, so for the first 8 years or so of owning my Jeep, I actually went through about 3 different internal slave cylinders. And I already know that at the time I knew the Peugeot was a really weak transmission, and so I was really trying to take it easy. I didn't want to go out on the trails. I didn't want to go running up sand dunes or anything. I just wanted to take it easy, just make it to work and back, and have some forward drive if I needed it. So I was really easy on it, and I still went through 3 of those within an 8-year span, so every couple of years or so. The last time it actually went out, I figured, this time I'm in a pretty good spot here. I only work 5-6 blocks away. I can put it up and leave it up on some stands here for a while, take my time. I went slow. I painted the transmission. That way, if anything ever leaked, if I saw anything else at all, then I'd see it immediately. I really couldn't afford the AX15 yet, so I did what I could with what I had. So the front seal, actually, when I tore it all down, when I finally got dropped out, dropped it down, it was actually leaking on the inside. So of course the slave had to be replaced, and now the transmission seal on front. Okay, that's just one more thing. It's a seal. It's like $20 or something. But now I got to take off the front plate. That was actually a little bit of fun here. There's this trick that you can do. You put the 2 nuts together, and then you turn them, and then it pulls the stud out. A double nut thing, it would mess up the threads. It would start meshing them together, and it wouldn't turn. So eventually I just welded a nut to the end and then took them out. So I had to do that all the way around. One extra step, one extra headache. It's okay. All right, this is going to be great. It's all going to be new. It's going to be clean when it goes back. Of course, I had to get a brand new flywheel. Look what happened to the old one. I actually had a little bit of an oil leak, I guess. The back of the valve cover gasket was leaking on it, but most of this, honestly, like 90% would be the clutch fluid, because of the last few days of driving it. When I pushed, I could hear a little sizzle, and then I look under it and it's dripping right out. So I know most of that's clutch fluid. So that right there fouled up the whole flywheel. I wasn't even about to just resurface it, just get a whole new one. While I'm in there, replace some. I did replace the valve cover gasket up top, so I fixed that leak. I got it all cleaned up again. While I'm here, why not paint the oil pan? Make that look nice too. So I went ahead and got all that stuff. Of course, all new parts went inside the bell housing. New slave cylinder, new hydraulic lines, new clutch disc, cover plate, all that good stuff. I even got a new pilot bearing while I'm here. Like I said, I took my time. I didn't rush anything. I followed through directions as I have a few other times I've done this job. I even took the slave cylinder out and did put it on the bench and filled it up with fluid. Got all the air bubbles out before I installed it, so I wanted it to be perfect. And when I put it all together, I put the transmission up there. And by the way, I did all this without a transmission jack. I did it with a couple of bottle jacks, and I had the Jeep actually up. It was pulled up At this time I didn't have any lift at all, so it was sitting a little bit lower than it should, and it was off in the mud. I actually parked it in between a couple of houses, well, a house and our neighbor's garage. It was just kind of tucked away off on the side there where you can kind of forget about it, but the clearance wasn't really anything. I didn't have any room, but I was just crawling onto there, just bench pressing everything back up, sliding in bolts here and there in the mud. Yeah, so I went through all the work, painted the parts, put it back together, lifted up. I was so excited. I was like, man, this is gonna be great. I put the drive lights on, I put the exhaust on, the crossbar, everything was put back together. My hands were still covered in grease, and I grabbed the keys and I went in, and I was so excited. The very first time I hit that clutch, you know, just nice and easy. There's actually retainers, straps that go around. There's, I think, 3 or 4 straps that go around the slave cylinder. And the first time you do that, they all snap, and then it pushes forward, and then you can use it, you know. One of them didn't snap. 2 of them did, and when it did, it kind of it went sideways, and it fouled it up, and then with the pressure, it sounded like a bubble just popping. So pop, and then my pedal went all the way to the floor immediately, and I'm like, wait, okay, what's going on? So I just very cautiously hit it again, and all my fluid just pouring right out the bottom of the bell housing. All this work for nothing. I was so mad. I didn't know what the problem was, but I'm losing fluid pressure, it's just not working, and I just put it back together. I shut the hood, and I just let the Jeep sit there. I remember it sat there for over a year. It was like a year and a month or something. I just let the Jeep sit there in between the house and the garage. So during that year, it just sat there. I took my time, you know, like I said, I worked like 5-6 blocks down the road, so it wasn't a big deal that I couldn't drive, but still, this constant reminder, you know, you got this Jeep sitting right there that close to the house. I mean, every time I go to the kitchen, I look out the window, there it is. I go to the bathroom, there it is. I go to and from work, there it's just sitting there for a whole year, every day. So this is when I did my homework, and I found out that I really am ready. I want to get the AX external slave cylinder. I want all of the good things here. I don't ever want to do this again, you know. So I ended up actually getting an AX15, and it came out of a 93 Wrangler. So Corsa compatible, same engines and everything. It was perfect. Being a 93 though, it still had the internal setup. I didn't care. I just wanted the transmission. I actually picked that up for about $200, so I thought that was a good deal. I was like, yes, you know. So I actually I ended up searching around, and I found a bell housing for it, for the external slave cylinder, and some internal front parts I completely forgot about. You're going to need of course, there's the bearing itself, and then there's a clutch fork, which slides, it pivots back and forth, and it pushes the bearing in to release the clutch. So I forgot about the fork. I don't know. I mean, an important part like this here. I got this whole box of goodies, $50. I did have to drive over 100 miles to get it. I think it's like 250 miles round trip, but $50, yeah, that's fine. Just jump in the wife's car and go get it. I went over to O'Reilly's, and I found out that I can get the slave cylinder itself, the hydraulic line, and the master reservoir that holds the fluid. All of this pre-bled system, no air bubbles, it's ready to go, it's got fluid, you just put it on, the whole thing. You don't have to worry about bleeding or anything like that. This actually came out of a 98 Cherokee. After actually getting the transmission itself back home, got all the parts, got my box of goodies, I painted this one too. This time I went gold, or farm yellow, whatever you call it. Okay, so this gets us from, I got the engine, the bell housing, all the components on the inside, the slave cylinder, the transmission, and when we go one step farther, something that completely went over my head, I forgot about. I wanted to use my my transfer case, my old one. It was a 21 spline, and it was mated to the Puget and the AX15. When they came out with their little output shaft, it came out with 23 spline, higher spline, higher strength, I guess. So they, of course, weren't going to match up, and I didn't even try it. I just randomly was reading about it when I was painting, and I went, oh, I forgot. So I went over to watch a couple of videos on YouTube about opening up the case, and it's got a planetary gear setup. It's really easy. You just pretty much open it up, take everything out, and you get the gear out, and you can swap it in for the correct spline gear. I actually got this one from Novak Conversions, and I got it really fast. I paid around $170 for it. I think the prices went up a little bit since I got it a few years back, but yeah, they're really good over there. They know their stuff. I called them up. I explained the situation, what I was doing, and they pulled it right up. They got all different types too. If you're going from, there's different lengths too. You need a long one or a short one, or what kind of input to make these up. You just tell them what your transmission is, what it's coming out of, what you're putting it in, what it's mating up to. They fix it right up. 5 days later, less than a week, I ended up right there on my doorstep. So I cracked open the case, slapped it in, and we're good to go. So one other thing you're going to need is an input gear if you're using your old transfer case. Of course, if you get the transmission with the case, you're good. You don't have to do anything. But so the only problem I actually really did run into when I was putting all this together, a couple small issues. I forgot about the gear, but to this simple plate. It's this little plate. It holds the transmission, it cradles it, and it connects the transmission to the transmission mount, which goes to the cross member bar. Really easy plate. I just completely forgot about it. I went up to the junkyard and I said, hey, can I get this plate? I'm looking for it. And they said, yeah, sure, that's fine. And he tried charging me like $400 for it. I'm like, why? Well, it's just a plate, right? And he's like, well, yeah, but it comes with a transmission. I'm like, it's a part. This big sign at the top, part yard. I just need the part, not the whole thing. And I went up and talked to the manager. They wouldn't sell me just the plate. They said that it goes with the transmission because it's a part of it. I thought this was really crazy too. I'm like, really? I mean, I even got an argument. I was like, if I try to buy a steering wheel, you're going to try to charge me for the entire steering column? I mean, I just need the part, just the little plate. It's so insignificant. I'll give you $20 for it. Right at $40. It's just a plate, okay? I ended up calling around, and I went to 3 different junkyards. All of them gave me the same story. They will not sell me the plate. I don't know if it's something that's just in my area, or I don't know what's going on here, but it's so stupid simple. I went out, I grabbed some scrap metal, and fired up the welder, and I made a little something just to hold it, just to connect it together, just to get me by, so I can drive around a little bit. Next paycheck, maybe I'll come back and fix it. A few minutes later, I actually did come back and look at that. I went with 1/4 inch thick steel, welded that right in there. Yeah, that's way beefier. But this is one other thing in your hunts. If you're trying to get the transmission, get the plate with it, because this might cause you some headaches if you don't have it, or you may have to make one. Another thing that kind of came up after I put it all back together was the linkage. So if you, of course, still want to use your 4-wheel drive, the Puget linkage was really obnoxious. I mean, there were things zigzagging back and forth and pivots and levers, and it didn't work out well. None of it is compatible with the AX15, because now the transmission sits a little bit farther back and it's a little bit bigger, so there's a little bit less space in there, so that's not going to work out. Just remove all that, take off the mounts, everything, just cut it all off. One thing a lot of people have been using is this Aziz product. You can see, look at that. Stupid, simple design. Just a lever, a couple little pivots there. Super adjustable to make it, just get it right in there. Perfect. Again, I broke out the welder. I just made one. I just got a couple plates and just made it myself. So that's another thing. Get your linkage all set up. That's might be an issue if you want to have your 4-wheel drive. Now, when the cross member actually, like the final step, when it's raising up the transmission, you're putting it all back together, this is where things are going to get a little interesting, because Jeep actually they saw ahead in the unibody here, they drilled extra holes for different transmissions that you could possibly be using. You know, so when you look under there, there's a few different holes. I believe that the front two holes are the ones that I was using. It was for the Puget, being closer, but the AX15, it's a little bit longer. I think it's like 1.5 or 3 inches or something longer. So it goes one hole back. Now these Jeeps, they always kind of annoyed me that they had a nut that went over a stud and then a nut that went in, or a bolt that went in. So you had one of each on each side. So I just took out all the studs, and the holes are already there, so you just go in there and tap them. I just went to the next available size, brand new grade A bolts holding it in. We're good to go. Also, the AX15, the shaft on the front, where it actually mates in with the pilot bearing onto the engine, is a different size than the Puget. So here, again, you're going to need a different pilot bearing. This one, I read a forum somewhere that one in the 70s works, and it came out of a 74 CJ Jeep. Maybe it was a 79. It was one of the 74. Just go into your auto parts store and ask to see all the pilot bearings. The one I got was brass, and it fit perfect. It was perfect fit. It went right in, and it actually is better. It got rid of the needle bearings that the Puget used. These needle bearings, if one of them fries or gets too hot or something, the grease and it overheats just once, then that whole thing is shot. Then you got this weird squeaking and things don't line up, and then it's always. And I know when it comes to removing pilot bearing, everyone's got a story like, oh yeah, just put some bread in there and tap in a socket or something. Just get the tool. Just go down to your AutoZone or something, or Harbor Freight. Just buy the tool, pull it out, 2 seconds, you're done. Oh, and a little tip: when you're putting the transmission actually up and mating it onto the motor there, I actually went out and I bought new bolts, long bolts, like really long, and that will help you start the threads and then kind of slowly put it together. And then once you get real close, then you can back that out and put in the actual bolt that goes in. So that actually helps out a little bit if you're having trouble kind of lining it up. And again, I'm in the dirt here, so I mean there's not a whole lot of room. You see my feet sticking up. I mean, so I had no room. So that's definitely one little trick. If you got some extra bolts laying around, do that. That was just one little tip that kind of helped out. But really, that's how I got rid of this Puget BA suitcase transmission. Well, you know, how's the AX15 handle? Well, it's actually a night and day difference. It's great. It's first gear it took me a little bit of time to get used to. Now the gear ratios here is the BA and the AX15. They're nearly identical. First gear is the only one that's a little different. So right now, when I'm at an intersection, when I cross, when I'm underneath the light, when I cross the next side of the street with a crosswalk, I can go from first gear, second gear, third gear, and then I cross the street. So first gear doesn't last that long. It's just really just to get you going. In the Puget, first gear would get you up to 15, 20 miles an hour. Then, okay, it's like a car, But yeah, they're nearly identical. So that's just one thing to consider. And the Puget, I remember now, everything just felt loose. Everything was just kind of janky. You put it in gear and it pops out by itself. So I was constantly holding it in gear, so I'd never take my hand off the shifter because I'd just be driving, I hit a bump or something, and it just pops out. And then I hear grinding, or I just start slowing down. This is really what I went through. And let's say once I had all my parts together, typical transmission install, it didn't take more than a couple of days. Just put it together. I, of course, spent a little extra time hunting for pieces, but if there's something I forgot here, of course, please leave a comment down below, ask me a question. I did this swap about 5 or 6 years ago now, and I haven't had to drop the transmission at all. And the setup I got from O'Reilly's with the pre-bled, it's still in there. So I can't believe it. It's still working great, and I actually have a lifetime warranty on it, so when it goes out, if it does, I'll just go right back in and 15 minutes and I'll just swap it out again, and I'm on my way. So yeah, if you guys got any other comments here, please leave them down below. Like and subscribe, please. You know, now maybe it's a good time to talk about fluids here just for a second. Just in case you are sticking with the AW for the automatic or going to it, it actually takes, what was it, Dexron 2 or 3 or Mercon, so pretty standard, you know, automatic transmission fluid, right? Now the NP, the 231, the transfer case, that actually takes any automatic transmission fluid you have, so that's good. Or there's actually guys out there that say if you use full synthetic, you know, 5W30, which is motor oil, that actually works too. The AX15 is what you really got to focus on here. This one is kind of special. When it rolled off the lines, it came out with 75W90 API GL3. Now this is a, unfortunately they don't have this anymore. At the time they discontinued the GL3 and then they came out with the GL4. So, okay, you can use 3 or 4 if you can find it. But then they discontinued 4. So they actually have a 5 now. Now you think, hey, let's go with the 5. You know, no, don't go and get the GL5. Wrong. This one actually has chemicals in there. It will deteriorate. It'll eat away at your brass at the synchros in the gears. And now there are some people have actually said to use. You can actually use good motor oil like 1030. You could use. And they actually swear by it. They say, yeah, it's great, smooth shifting. It's not really the right stuff, but it's actually better than the GL5. Really, there are some fluids out there. Pennzoil actually has a synchro mesh that works well. Royal Purple has a synchro max, same thing. Redline MT90. I've actually heard really good things about Redline, and this is the route I went. But yeah, however, this stuff is not cheap. It's like 20 bucks a bottle, and I think you need like 3 of them or 4. Yeah, you're gonna need a few of those. So 20 bucks a piece. It's not cheap, but this stuff works really well, and it's got the same ratings. It's meant for these transmissions. It's not going to eat or deteriorate anything, so they're good. But oh man, I'm sorry. I told you guys we'd do an oil thing. I got my oil. I got filter. I even got a oil pan gasket too. I got everything all set, and then when it came down to it, I'm 1 quart oil short. And they don't sell this stuff in the quarts too. But this is gonna be next video. I'm gonna start talking about some of the T5. It's a zinc additive they put in there, but we'll get into that later. But all right, thanks for watching.